بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا إلى يوم الدين أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد هن لباس لكم وأنتم لباس لهن وقال ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وجعلنا للمتقين إماما. So my dear brothers and sisters and our dear friends and our dear elders, nice to be in your midst on this Saturday evening. It's a very competitive time. Lots of things are competing for our attention on a Saturday evening. Eating outside, dawats, maybe a wedding, a walima or whatever. So it's nice to be, for myself as well, nice to be in a masjid at this time. And this excuse of a marriage program has brought us together. I want to make this a bit different. I don't want it to be a normal monologue, one-sided bayan. Because sometimes I come and say something and it's totally irrelevant to what may be necessary for you or interesting or required. So what we want to do is I want to speak a bit about marriage. Marriage is something that pretty much everybody should go through. I'm not going to say does go through. I mean majority do go through it. We should go through it because it's a sunnah. In the most optimal of times it's a sunnah. So the way I want to do this is that I want to say a few things that I think will be useful just through research and experience over the last 20 years of being married and dealing with marital issues for over 2 decades. That's the only reason I even feel myself that I can even sit here and talk to you about it. Lots of people asking, can you talk about tarbiyah of children? Can you do a course on tarbiyah of children? I'm like, not yet. Let me get my 2 eldest ones married and stabilized, then I think, okay, I've done a decent job, now I can speak about it. Because it's a massive responsibility. And right now, with the various different paradigms and cultures that are around us, because many of us are not necessarily fully indigenous, in the sense of, I don't want to get into that debate, but we have, mashallah, very mixed paradigms that we deal with. The Indian paradigm, the Pakistani paradigm, whether that be Arab paradigm, British paradigm, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of conflicting ideas that come, which obviously provide a challenge to marriage. So inshallah what we're going to do is I'm going to say a few things and then I'll open it up for questions. And marriage always brings up a lot of questions because everybody has some experience about it or questions about it. So firstly, what I'd like to start with is that, well, let me ask how many are married here or how many are yet to be married, because then I can structure the course accordingly. There's no point me talking about how to get married when you're already married and probably never going to be married again, even though some of you are probably sitting here hoping to do so. So how many of you are not married? Okay, so that's about 30%, maybe 30, 35%. Maybe that reflects what's at the sister side as well. So we'll have to balance, inshallah, we'll talk a bit about both. Firstly, what I want to mention is when everybody has an idea that I'm going to have to get married. And then what generally happens is that you have a few ideas in mind of this is kind of what I'm looking for. Some people, mashallah, they're so trusting in their parents, or maybe just so indifferent to the idea that they have outsourced the whole thing to their parents. You find me whoever you want, bismillah. Right. So you do get a variety of people. There's never one answer that fits all. However, there are some fundamentals that can benefit us all. Firstly, what is preparation for marriage? So when you get fixed up, preparation means shopping, to find a decent hall or venue, guest lists, the menu of the food you're going to cater for, and then pretty much every week becomes a shopping week. That's why the best advice is that get married as soon as possible. So if you're going to get married, if you're fixed up to get married in 3 weeks, you don't only have to do shopping for 3 weeks. But you'd have to cram it in. And if you're going to get married after 6 months, then every week is shopping week. Where do you guys go to do wedding shopping? Bolton or Manchester? Where's all your golden glittery shopping? Where does that go? Where is that now? You know, there are these traditional places that people go to. You don't have a place to go, or what? Huh? Or Manchester or Blackburn. Okay, there seems to be a difference of opinion. I said I'm not going to be a monologue. I'd like you to speak when asked, at least, inshallah. So I can learn from you as well, inshallah. Preparation for marriage has to start much earlier than you find a spouse. Preparation for marriage is at many levels. Because when you are married, you're giving your entire self. You're putting yourself with somebody else. And there has to be an adjustment period. And you want that adjustment period of where you both come to terms and meet at a comfortable level. You want that to be as short as possible. And the only way to make that short as possible is if you're prepared to be flexible and you're already preempted certain things. And you're willing to be adjusting and flexible. So preparation for marriage means to really think about what you want and how you're going to go about doing that. So generally what we suggest is that you make a list of your ideal criteria, your ideal characteristics, personality. What kind of a person are you looking for? It's become more complicated than it was 50 years ago. Right? And I don't say that, I'm saying this from research, that 50 years ago, many people got married, majority in fact, got married without speaking to their spouse. They may have seen them, that's in the culture. But speaking, I did not speak to my wife. And I only got married 23 years ago. Right? I did not speak, but every one of my wife's sisters, then they spoke to their prospective spouses before getting married. Times had changed. Why did you not need to speak? Because somebody came to me recently, a few years ago actually. He said, Mufti so-and-so, our akabir, some of them had given this fatwa, even about looking, there's some, he said that my daughter needs to get married. Can she speak to her prospective spouse? I said, yes, it's allowed, formally, within a certain measure, just about the topic, chaperoned, with somebody present, and all the other guidelines you give. He said, no, Mufti so-and-so said you can't. I said, that's fine. You can go with that opinion if you want to. He says, you and Mufti Sahib in IDA, they say you can, and how are you going to say this? You see, the difference is that the times have changed. A woman, 30, 40 years ago, knew exactly what her role was going to be when she got married. That she was going to be a housewife. She was going to cook. She was going to clean. She was going to have children, and that was her function. The only one thing you had to figure out was that whether they're going to stay with the in-laws or not. I think that was only the variable. That was the only variable. Like, are we going to stay with the in-laws or are we going to stay separate? Other than that, it was straightforward village. You probably knew the family anyway, right? That was all it was. There was no need for interviews. There was no need for mashwara. It was like you knew your role. That's what your life is cut out for. And they were happy with that. Alhamdulillah. We're not saying it's a bad thing. We're just saying that's the reality. Nowadays, both the men have a career ideas and so do women. Not just that, it's women are working now or want to work. Right? We're not going to get into whether it's halal or haram and all that. We're just saying that's the reality. I was in King's College about 2 months ago. 2/3 of the women, 2/3 of the attendees were women, and only 1/3 were men. Right? So I don't know if that's reflective of who studies there, or is that reflective of who's interested, or I don't know. But there are women who are studying now. Right? So even if they're not studying, even if they're alimas, they have ideas. Right? As to what's going to happen in the future. And you better get that right. There's no point getting married to somebody, then trying to make them adjust to the way you want it. Lots of people come and they say, I found a wonderful woman. The only thing is, she's everything, but she doesn't wear hijab. I said, is that important to you? Yes, it is. But she's got such a good heart, she's gonna... I said, look, why you taking that risk? Aren't there enough hijabis out there that you would like that? Okay, if you want a niqabi, then find a niqabi. Right? So why do it? Why do it the other way? That hopefully she'll do it. And just have that challenge and that additional adjustment. The less you have of, the more compatibility you can have, the less problems you have to worry about. That is, again, this is all to do with the outer diligence we need to do. The real secret bonding that takes place is through what we call the barakah. And marriage, there are two main themes when it comes to marriage. Think about it. Every time you've attended a nikah ceremony, the khutbah, what was the common theme of that khutbah? What were the main concept mentioned in that khutbah? If anybody's ever explained it to you, if you don't know Arabic, you may remember the verses. There are 3 verses that are recited in that khutbah of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. And the common theme in all of them, they're all verses of taqwa. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatih. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida. Ya ayyuhan nasu taqu rabbakum. Taqwa. What's that got to do with marriage? Why is that khutbah recited in a marriage ceremony? Because if you have God-fearingness and you do things how Allah wants you to do them, then Allah will place the barakah. Otherwise, how else do two strangers come together and be able to deal with the slight or more differences and yet still come together for the sake of Allah? Because the only reason you're coming together is because that is the institution of marriage. That's why you go through a nikah. Otherwise, people can just shack up together as they're doing. But there's no barakah in that. Nikah is what places the barakah. So the first thing is taqwa, and the other thing is barakah. That's why the dua we give to a married couple is Barakallahu lak, wa baraka alayk, wa jama'a baynakuma fi khair. Barakallah, lots of barakah. May Allah bless you. May Allah shower His blessings upon you, like envelope you in blessings, and unite you together in goodness. Lots of good is produced through your union. Through your coming together, there's mashallah a lot of goodness that's produced. Because remember, a happy couple, right, with piety contributes to a happy community of piety. Some of the greatest reasons for problems out there of these people who have rage and who do crazy things is that they've probably come from a very, very unstable family. We just don't understand that a stable family is essentially the essential ingredient for the fabric of society. And that's why it needs to be done well, both from a practical perspective and a spiritual perspective. The talaq laws, I'm not jumping to talaq yet, but they're necessary. The book I wrote, many books on marriage do not mention talaq. When you do a nikah ceremony, they want you to do a bayan generally before a nikah ceremony. The maulas have to do bayans before nikah ceremonies, right? Which the couples want to hurry up, get it done so we can do our food, dawat, walima, whatever, and get onto it. And especially if the maulana takes too long, then it's an issue. So I don't like to extend those bayans because people have a lot to do unless they say they want it. But one of the benefits of that bayan is that is when you'll probably get to speak to people who probably never hear a bayan. Because in our Jumu'ahs as well, though you have to be in Jumu'ah, but because it's only the Arabic khutbah 1:30 or whatever time it is, that's when we come. The 20-minute bayan before that, only the very diligent ones come in that. So can you imagine a person who's been growing up from a young age, they've been to maktab, they've assimilated a few Islamic ideas from their parents, along with a lot of other maybe cultural ideas or wrongs or inconsistencies. And then when they're grown up, they have no other access to Islamic information because what was there for them, which is Jumu'ah, Bayan, before, they don't come to that. The few they get is through WhatsApp. Like the few WhatsApp clips that come through, that's about it. That's the limit of, that's their source of information. So, we need stability. And stability in communities is found through stability in families. The Prophet ﷺ, you can see how much turmoil and challenges he went through, especially at the beginning. I mean throughout, but especially at the beginning, when he was in Makkah. In Makkah Mukarramah, he is married at the age of 25 to Khadija radiallahu anha, who's 40, so she's 15 years his senior. And then 15 years later, when he's 40 years old, he gets prophecy. Right? He becomes a prophet. So Khadija radiallahu anha is how old by then? 55. Then 10 years into that, which were probably some of the toughest 10 years of Makkah, because he stayed how long in Makkah Mukarramah? 13. First 10 years, he's got everybody against him. He's got the starting of his mission. Abu Bakr has joined him and so on. But the two people that gave him the greatest source of strength was Abu Talib, the external strength. And internally, when he would come home, is Khadija radiallahu anha, the first person to become Muslim out of everybody. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anha is the first man, but Khadija is the first individual outside the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She's obviously the first woman as well, but she's the first person to become Muslim. When the 10th year comes in of prophecy, 3 years before migration, he loses both of them in the same year. Khadija radiallahu anha passes away, and so does Abu Talib. And that's why he called that year the year of two griefs, Amul Huznayn. Because he lost two of his closest and greatest supporters. You need that internal support. Anybody, whatever the case is outside, people who are in good marriages will know this. That if you can come home, what your spouse can do for you. And I'm going to be talking to the women as well. So this is not a man-centric dars, okay? It's not a man-centric bayan. So the women should not feel, this is obviously indirectly advice for them as well, of what their role is. Having that adjustment, if the man comes home who's technically the person who's supposed to be doing the work outside and everything else, right, comes home after whatever challenges they're facing, the wife can provide that sukoon. The house is called, you see in the Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, so that you gain sukoon with them. The man gets sukoon with the woman. This is the nature. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam alayhi salam from clay. Then he could have just created two forms out of clay. Right? Adam alayhi salam was created from clay. He could have just created two forms. One Adam and one Hawa alayhim as-salam. And said, okay, you two. But then that would have been independent. I think the common factor would have been the clay. But in this case, what he did was he created Adam alayhi salam, then from a rib created Hawa alayhi salam. So when Adam alayhi salam woke, came into the world and he looked around, he saw Hawa alayhi salam, instantly felt the affection. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, and the Mufassirin mentioned there as well, had it not been like that, there would not have been this natural attraction between men and women. May Allah give us all natural attraction between men and women. It's a big dua we should make today, because if that goes wrong, it gets very complicated. So, you gain sukoon. The house in Arabic, the home in Arabic is called maskan. Maskan. Right? Those who know Arabic will know. It's called a bayt. Bayt is just a room really. A dar is an estate. A maskan is the place you live, the dwelling. Why is it called a maskan? Because it's supposed to be the place of sukoon, the place of tranquility and comfort. That's what you want in your marriage, don't you? What kind of marriage do you want? Where you don't have a maskan, you have a house. You have a beautiful house, but no maskan. No place of tranquility, comfort. That's how do we achieve that? I think the way to achieve that is to try to do your due diligence. So you have to be practical about it. But make sure if there's anything in your life that you follow the sunnah 100% and the sharia 100%, we should try in everything. Right? But if there's something you should go out of your way to make sure you don't cut any corners in that regard, is a marriage. Do you know why? Because if it's a purchase and I want to make sure I purchase a car so I don't, or I sell my car, I make sure I don't lie or whatever and do it according to Sunnah, alhamdulillah. But that's the temporary thing. When it's about marriage, it's not just about you and it's about children. All of that will impact your progeny. Marriage is a huge idea. It's a massive institution and it has a long-lasting effect. So when you get married, you're not just getting married to an individual to fulfill your desire, to make it halal, but it's about children and a progeny. Can you imagine, the Prophet ﷺ, it's mentioned about him that he did not come from the line that he came from, the ancestry that he came from. His genealogy had no safah, which basically means no unchastity in there. It was pure. Wouldn't we want that for ourselves? And our grandchildren, don't we owe it to them? See where we're taking marriage. Don't think marriage is you and your spouse and your immediate children. That's why the dua about marriage, the most powerful dua about marriage, which is a miracle dua. It's in the Quran, which I read at the beginning. For those who don't know it already, check the end of Surah Al-Furqan in 18th Surah. In 18th Juz, Surah Al-Furqan, Allah the dua Allah quotes is رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. Rabbana, our Lord, grant us from our spouses. So it's plural, which basically incorporates everything. The wife can read it, the husband is included in there, the husband can read it, the wife is included in there. In the traditions that had more than one spouse, that's included in there. It's all there. Such a comprehensive, Allah's words. Min azwajina wa dhurriyatina, and from our progeny. Allah does not say min awladina, min abna'ina, min banatina. He didn't say just my immediate children. He says my progeny. So create from my spouses and my progeny those that will be a delight for our eyes, a joy for our eyes. That you can look at your children today and you can look at your entire progeny on the day of judgment and say, Alhamdulillah. Can you see? It's a massive idea. It's a big idea. It's very far reaching. That you will inshallah arise on the day of judgment and you will say, this was your great-great-granddaughter. This was your great-great-grandson. And mashallah, they will be a source of, because that's your sadaqah jariyah. Because it was an investment you made. So it better be an investment you make. They could become good afterwards on their own accord. But if it's not your investment, you don't get reward for it. That's how our deen works. You just plant the seeds. But if you don't plant any seeds, but something grows somewhere, it's not yours. Right? Because it's all about intention with us, isn't it? So that's what you need to think about for marriage. It's a big idea. It's very big. So, رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا, and make us imams, leaders for the righteous ones. So especially those of you who want to be on mosque committees and university heads and university, what do you call it, or maktab heads or whatever, right? You want to be leadership position anyway, you should be reading this dua anyway. And even if you don't want to be head, you should still be reading, because the good thing, if this dua gets accepted, then you know what's going to happen? You will be a force for good. Somebody will benefit through you. And that's the amazing thing. We'd rather be a force for good than a force for evil, even if that's without wanting to be. So that's why this dua is so powerful, the ulama mention. And if I tell you this, inshallah, you're going to read it every day. Because seriously, it is such a powerful dua. You know, when you get married, there's always that adjustment period. You can never get 100% because you can't design a wife or design a husband. Not yet anyway, right? So when you do get married, there's going to be, hopefully if you've done your due diligence, and even if you've got barakah and everything, there's going to be still some things that you're going to have an upset with once in a while, right? I don't want to ask the question, is there anybody here who's been married for 20 years and has absolutely never ever had a problem? Like minor even, right? Is there anybody like that? Because the Prophet ﷺ had issues with his wife sometimes. So, I mean, if you have, then I don't know, you're doing something wrong or right, I don't know. Once the Prophet ﷺ went to Fatima radiallahu anha's house. He says, where's Ali radiallahu anhu? He says, oh, we've had a bit of an issue and he's sleeping in the masjid. He left and he's sleeping in the masjid. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ goes to the masjid and he sees him lying there on the dust. So then he has that affectionate tone where he says, Kum Aba Turab. His name is Ali, but Aba Turab, father of soil, just taking the reference to the soil he's sleeping on. Right? It's casual. These things happen. You just have to have the ability to be able to deal with differences. If you're a sensitive person, I feel sorry for you. Get help. Right? If you're a sensitive person, a domineering person, then I feel sorry for you. And I only say that so that you can correct yourself. Have you ever heard of premarital counseling? It's probably not even on the radar, right? But I think it's a very good idea for some people. Somebody, while I was writing the book, somebody gave that idea, premarital counseling. There's marital counseling, which is after you have a problem, you go for counseling. Premarital counseling is for those who genuinely, seriously think that, look, I've got an anger problem. With my brothers, with people I work with friends, I get angry very quickly. I'm going to mess up my marriage. Think about it. I'm not saying you have to go to premarital counseling, but at least acknowledge where we are so that we can work on it, right? So, I've got an anger problem. I'm very sensitive. Somebody just says something out of place to me and I don't speak to them for a week. That's a very bad idea. Even my children, we never let them break up with anybody like that. And every time they've come and said, oh, so-and-so doesn't want to speak to me, like if some will say, that's a very bad idea. How can you stop saying? You just say what you have to say and finish, and end of. That's not a way to deal with things. It's just a bad habit. I'll give you an example. There was a person I know very closely. Well, I know the couple now very closely, but the wife, she got married into a family in another city, knowing the circumstance. The man was a Maulana, she's an Alima, but he doesn't have a father. His father's passed away. So he's got an older mother, and he's got two sisters who are disabled. Right? And a brother who's also disabled. She knew what she's getting into. Right? A lot of people would not get into this situation, like, I can't deal with it. And she's going to be expected to stay with the mother in that family and do the khidmah. And she says, that's fine, I'm willing to do that. He seems like a good guy, it's fine. I'm willing to do the khidmah. As they say, khidmat ke jazbe se aayi wo. So they got married. Now what happens is, none of that perturbs her. But the mother, her way of dealing with a difference of opinion is to give you the silent treatment. She don't speak to you for 2-3 days. Now if you're the only two people in the house and you can't communicate, what are you going to do about it? So it just became unbearable. You do sabr, how much do you do sabr? Right? So it became unbearable. Now the good thing in this case is that they were not living in London, because in London you can't buy another place so easily. Right? It's too expensive. He was sensible. Now in his situation, most men or many men think, I can never leave my mother. I cannot move out. But he did the right thing. He found a house close by, moved in there, and now it's been years and years, decades, and they're fine. With not just with them, but with the mother as well. Sometimes you just need that distance. Initially it sounds bad, but sometimes that's the only way. I can give you tens of stories like that. And where they didn't do that, it's just ended up with misery. Another case, there's no mother in the picture because she's passed away. There's no mother-in-law. It's the father. His son gets married. And mashallah, she comes in, the daughter-in-law comes in, and they're doing fine. She's doing khidmah of the father. Traditional, Asian. Alhamdulillah, it works. She's got a degree or anything, but she's doing khidmah. Now, the father decides to get married again, which is alhamdulillah, which is good. He got married. So, stepmother. She has now problems getting along with this daughter-in-law. Right? what's really weird is that, the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, if you look at them separately, individually, they're perfectly decent people. Their friends would never complain about them. They're decent people. But there's this dynamic that as soon as it becomes a mother-in-law, in my capacity as a mother-in-law, and a daughter in the capacity of a daughter-in-law, there's something that happens there, right? So they started having problems. Now the father, he's an idealist, right? What's an idealist? He's not a realist, he's an idealist. He's telling his son, why don't you sort her out? Now, I know the story, I'm blaming the stepmother more. I know the full story, because they're people very close to me. And the daughter-in-law was fine all this time, but when she came in now, the adjustment, because she can't cook Indian food as much. The mother, they've separated the days. Okay, this many days you cook, but then she cooks Indian food, she cooks more Western food. Their timing for the days when they're supposed to cook together, one wants to do it earlier, the other one wants to do it later. It's just too much adjustment. So the father's first calling all the brothers, all his children, saying, why can't they sort themselves? Why can't they sort themselves out? But nothing's happening. You can't. You have to be real about it. Not idealistic. Idealism means you want an ideal world. You can't have it all the time. That's the nature of the dunya. Paradise, maybe you'll be able to get what you want there. You will be able to get what you want there. But this is not paradise. So you have to. Eventually, alhamdulillah, what they did was, they had a big house. So they separated. Upstairs, they made a dormer, the attic. And the son and his family moved up. And the father and his wife stayed downstairs, the mother-in-law. So now they've got 2 kitchens and 2 bathrooms and all the rest of it. And now no problems. And now the whole family gets along well. Sometimes you just need a bit of distance. So going back to the beginning, you have to think, are you able to get along with people? Are you able to deal with people, deal with challenges, deal with setbacks, deal with responses, deal with disagreements? How do you deal with that? Because if there's one ingredient, which the Prophet ﷺ himself said that contributes to the success of marriage, what would you say it is? Aside from barakah. What do you think in terms of interaction? What do you think is the one single characteristic that is a single ingredient that is probably the most important one to get along between 2 people? That's part of the big idea. It's one aspect of it. There's something bigger. Compromise is also one aspect. Right? That's also one aspect. It's good character. It's good character. Communication is important, but good character. You can only have good communication if you've got good character, you're willing to. The balance of character. What is character? That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, the best of you is the one with the best character. And then he said, I am the best to my wives. I am the best to my wives. And the best of you are the best character. He linked the 2 ideas together. What is character? Character is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates all of us in various different weaknesses and strengths. If you just look in your own family, among your brothers and sisters, isn't there one of them which is more generous than the other one? Or are they exactly the same? Would you say one is slightly more generous than the other? Would you say one gets more angrier than the other quickly? One is more intelligent than the other? Right? Now, if by nature I am less generous than my brother, I'm more miserly because I think I am, right? I'm not sinful for that. That's not sinful. That's my nature. But if I act on that, if I act miserly, where I'm supposed to not be, like where you're not supposed to be miserly, where it would be haram to be miserly is in giving zakat, and then on a lesser degree sadaqat, or where you need to spend in common decency. So your neighbors are constantly giving you stuff, you never send anything back. Everybody gives your children Eid, but you don't give because you say it's Eid is bidat. You see what I'm saying? You go to restaurants with your friends, you go to eat out, and whenever it comes time to pay, you go to wash your hands. Do you see what I'm saying? That's when you're acting on your miserly nature. And the Prophet ﷺ said, your nature can be adjusted. That's why he encouraged inculcating good character. If it was static, you could not change it. And there's people who say that, I'm 60 years old now, I'm not going to change. There are people who say that. They are dictators in their house, right? And I'm not talking about you if you think I am, right? Because I don't know anybody here. And if you think I am talking about, then it probably is you actually. There are people who are dictators. Nobody wants to speak. I've had cases where the wife is coming and saying, my husband is like this. And I said, well, get somebody to talk to. He doesn't listen to anybody. Get his dad to talk to him. Get his brothers. The local imam. No, he's broken with everybody. Right. Now, when you talk to some people, they say, no, she's going to have to change or he's going to have to change. I'm not going to change. That is, you are basically reducing the mercy of Allah. Because for some reason, shaitan has convinced you that you cannot change. That is shaitani. Because believe me, you will change if the right thing. There's a person who used to be very arrogant, like that, very self-confident. And then he became sick with a chronic illness. And mashallah, the humility came with that. Right? That's when the humility came. Because he realized his need, his ihtiyaj. Right? His need. That's when he realized it. Because sometimes you just feel like, I get my way all the time. The way I get my way is I become a bull in a china shop. Just break everything in the rest, and people are just scared. So that's not the way to do things. So while I'm speaking about pre-marriage, I'm also talking about after marriage, because akhlaq is the single most. Because from akhlaq you can get agreement. From akhlaq you can get adjustment. That's where you get sabr from. The three main akhlaq, or the way a person's akhlaq are made, is through three main ingredients. Anger, the anger faculty, the desire faculty, and the knowledge faculty. Right? So if you have too much anger, then you're going to be wild and critical and all the rest of it. If you have too less, you're going to be cowardly. And remember, if that's the man, women don't like those kind of men. Right? Where you can't stand up and do what you need to do. Right? Where you just take it. You'll be abused, or let your family be abused and you don't do anything. That's where you have shortcoming of anger. So there needs to be a bit of anger faculty where it makes you do what's right. Number two, desire. If you have too much desire, it leads to promiscuity, adultery, infidelity, bestiality, and all the other harams. And if you have too less of it, you won't fulfill your spouse's needs. And of course, knowledge, you need to have enough knowledge that you don't overplay it to get into realms which are not within our boundary. And you shouldn't have too less so you don't know. This is where it is. Now, if you look at Abu Bakr, the Prophet ﷺ is the only person that had equilibrium in his character. Perfectly tuned. Doesn't matter what you threw at him, he knew how to exactly deal with it. Arabi comes in the mosque, desert Arab comes in the mosque and starts urinating. Everybody gets upset, probably rightly so. Imagine if somebody did that here. Right? But Rasul said, look, now he's already committed himself. Now it's harmful to jump at him. Right? Because it's already messed up now. Who would think like that? Who's going to think like that? There was another big scholar. On the day his son died, he was seen smiling. This was his way to say that I'm not unhappy with the decree of Allah. But what the ulama write is that that was not what the Prophet ﷺ would have done. When his grandchild died, he wept. He knew exactly what to do, express the right emotions at the right time. I could be speaking to you, talking about akhlaq, and I get cut off, somebody cuts me off, that's what really, it does really, or if somebody misrepresents me, I get really angry, right? So I will say something that I might regret later. But the Prophet ﷺ never said anything that he regretted. So he had the perfect equilibrium in all those faculties. Umar radiallahu anhu, he had, obviously was challenged in some aspects. His anger was above. That's why he was ready to, but eventually he was moderated. Right? Everybody, the one who's going to be closest to the Prophet ﷺ is the one who's gets closer to him in all of these aspects. And you need that. That is the secret of marriage. Akhlaq is the secret of marriage. So, رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا. That dua I was talking, I just finished that point off. That is such a powerful dua that the ulama have written that if you've got a problem with your spouse, let's say you're a woman, you've got a problem with your husband doing something with the other, and that just really bothers you. You've tried talking and everything, and it's gonna, when you do that dua, either Allah will sort him out, so that defect will be removed. If not, it's up to Allah. If not, then at least it won't bother you anymore. That's the power of this dua. See, because even if you've done all your due diligence and you found a spouse that you think is mashallah, right? There are always going to be things you'll find out afterwards. But what the Prophet ﷺ said is, La yafruk mu'minun mu'mina. No believer should hate, no husband should hate his wife. He's generally speaking to the men, that's why he's always about man to his wife. So women should not feel left out. It's the same the other way around. Because what he then says is that if he is dissatisfied with one aspect of her, he should be satisfied with another. Very few people are all bad, or majority bad. There are people like that, by the way, right? Their evil just dominates everything. But that's very few. Majority of people have both good and bad. If you read this dua, Allah will, inshallah, either change your spouse, remove the discrepancy, or at least make you won't be bothered with it anymore. And this has worked for so many people. You should literally do it 5 times a day. It doesn't matter where you are in your marriage. Because marriage is something that should never get old. They say that a long journey is difficult, but if you have a good companion, then it becomes easy. And that's why it's a long journey. Marriage is a long journey. Why is marriage a long journey? Where did husband and wife start from? Tell me. Where did the concept of husband and wife begin? Where were the first couple? In Jannah. That's where they started, right? They came out later, didn't they? They started in paradise. Where does this journey of husband and wife marriage end up? It ends up in paradise. Now you might think, what does that mean? What that means is, have you ever thought who you are going to be with in paradise? Yes, you can visit your mother, your father, right? You can visit your children, your aunties. You can visit whoever you want, inshallah. If that's what you want, you can do that. But who are you going to be living with? Who's your permanent partner in paradise? The wife is not a hur. Hur is different to your wife. I don't want to start on paradise, but every man will have 2 women from this world. And the hurs will be separate. Okay? So, you will have your wife. I don't know if you're just worried about hurs, but you will have your wife as well. Okay?
He's going to be in trouble.
No, seriously, there are people who've come and said, I don't like my husband. I don't want to be with him in paradise. And let me just talk about paradise first. Paradise is nothing without a spouse. Look in the Quran. Everywhere there's a detail of paradise, there's always couples who are mentioned, spouses. It's with azwajihim. They're always alal araiki. They're always with their spouses. Basically, what is paradise without a spouse? That's Allah's natural system. That's why He created us. But there's no procreation in paradise. There's no babies in paradise. Right? That much I think is pretty agreed on. Right? There's no babies in paradise. So, paradise, nearly everywhere that there's a good discussion of paradise in Quran or Sunnah, it's about husband and wife, along with what you enjoy. Because it's a natural thing for a man to want a woman and a woman to want a man. It's a natural thing. And that will continue in paradise. Except that there's a machine outside of paradise, an extractor machine, which will extract all the hasad and jealousy and all of that. That's why if anybody's wondering that, this is generally a woman's issue, that how can, because the natural jealousy kicks in. It's like, how can my husband have hurul ain? I mean, it's a reality, you can't do anything about it, to be honest, but at least to explain is that before you get into paradise, there'll be no hasad. Or if you, even the most hasid person in the world, right? The most envious individual in the world, you will have none of that left in, because paradise doesn't allow for it, right? It's just not allowed in paradise. Paradise is just all good, right? So the whole idea of marriage starts in paradise and it will end in paradise. So remember, this journey that you're going to take is not just in this world, but it will be of the hereafter, right? When I open the questions, one of the first questions I'm going to get is that if you're only married to one, how do you get two in paradise, right, of the world? I'll leave you to ask that question. I won't answer it right now, right? But it's a very long journey. Because look, your father and mother, they're going to have their own husband, they're going to have their own to worry about, right? So not that you can't visit them, like they say that on Fridays, you're going to go to Jannah, you're going to go for a special meeting of this special souk, they say. And there will be something that will blow the musk onto you. When you come back, your spouse will say, hey, you're more beautiful than when you went. You're already supposed to be of absolute beauty, and now you're more beautiful. And you will tell your spouse, you're also more beautiful. And every Jumu'ah this will happen for the rest of eternity. It's mind-boggling here, like, you run out of designs here. Like, how much more can we do? But there, can you believe it? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been preparing paradise. He's prepared it in eternity, long time ago. But since then, He has been updating it, upgrading it. Where is that? What kind of upgrade are we talking about? It's already something that you can never imagine. But inshallah, we want to end up there with our spouse. That requires mutual respect, mutual contribution, mutual piety, and all the rest of it. Now, the hadith, I just want to mention. A lot of people misunderstand. I want to mention this hadith. Where's Idris bhai? Who's in charge? What time should we start questions? Because otherwise I can go on for 2 hours. What time should we start questions? Yeah, I know, but I've got somewhere else to go. I've got a marriage course tomorrow. This is only a marriage bayan. They're booked in for 4 hours. Here it's only 2 hours. What's this? Okay. The questions have started. Okay, let me just mention one point, and then if I've got anything else, I'll mention it within the questions. The hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, تُنْكَحُ الْمَرْأَةُ لِأَرْبَعٍ. Women are married for 4 reasons. This is not instruction. This is a statement, observation. That generally when a man is looking at a woman, in that time at least, and still for the most case, we may have other consideration as well. Generally men marry women for 4 reasons. That's what they look at. And because he's talking to the men, that's why he's talking about women. If he's talking to the women, he'd say women would marry men for the following reasons. So if the reasons apply to you, alhamdulillah, it applies to you whether you're a man or woman. لِمَالِهَا جَمَالِهَا حَسَبِهَا and دِينِهَا. One big reason is her beauty. That's definitely something that a lot of people look at. And today, it's one of the biggest things that people are looking at. Right? Because the whole world is about makeup, attractiveness and beauty. Even the men are getting, there's guys online, males, who literally look like females, and they're doing makeup tutorials. I hope nobody here is getting into that. Right? Or even watching that stuff, subhanallah. Right? But what's the capitalist, they're going to just push because they want to sell more makeup. Now, if imagine only women are buying makeup. Imagine if the men started buying makeup. Can you imagine how much money they're going to make? Right? It's huge. So nowadays people, they create a product and then they create a demand for it. So even if you don't need it, you want to buy it. Because psychologically they appeal to your inner nafs. And the psychology has done all of that. So either for the wealth, for their family lineage, or for their, what else? Their wealth. The wealth, and finally he said the deen. Now, then he said, make sure you are victorious and you're a champion with the deen. So does this mean, I want to understand, does this mean that you must ignore the other 3 and just focus on the deen? Who thinks that? Unfortunately, this is a misconception. So, in my class in Bukhari, 20-something years ago, there was one student, he kept reading this hadith. He says, you know what? He was a bold person. He kept saying, you know what? I don't care how she looks. I don't care where she's from. I'm just going to look for the deen. So there was 2 married students in the class. So one of them comes along As a very decent guy, he said, let me just talk to you alone. You know, you keep saying about looks and so on, right? Okay. He says, this thing that you keep going on about, you're mistaken. Nowadays, attractiveness is a big thing. You're going to go out, you're going to see those who attract you. And if you come home and you don't have attractiveness, right, you're going to be really miserable. So make sure you don't discount those ideas. Now, the ulama like Mullah Ali al-Qari, Allama Aini, all the commentators of Bukhari, Fathul Bari, Asqalani, etc., they've all commented on this hadith that they're very clear that this does not mean the Prophet is saying ignore the other three. Just don't make them the priority at the cost of the deen. Right? Because look at beauty, right? Beauty has a certain... And hopefully if you have beauty, now what is beauty? Can anybody define beauty to me? It's a very philosophical question. That basically says beauty is subjective, but the experts say that's not the case, right? Though practically speaking, I think it does have some truth. Beauty is an inclination towards symmetry and balance and perfection. What do you call beautiful? Something which is balanced, not weird, unless your antenna is skewed, right? So that's why the reason why Apple did well in their iPhones is because it was a very balanced product, very sleek in every aspect. Right? And I'm not promoting, I don't have an iPhone, I don't intend to get one, so I'm just mentioning that in general. People, when you look at something like that. And of course, in some cases, you do get, everybody has their subjectivity. So basically what I'm saying is, the reason I'm making this is I don't want this to contribute, because there's such an obsession with beauty today, so many women are in depression because they think they're not beautiful enough or attractive enough. I don't want to add to your misery, because there are basically people that will like a certain thing and others will not. That's why we have companies manufacture various different types of things, because there's always a variance. So beauty is important because that is something that as a human being we are inclined to. So there's nothing wrong with it unless you make it your priority, because beauty will eventually fade. Number two is the family lineage. Family lineage is very important. Not for the right reason. Right reason, if somebody has a good family, that means they've got, if we take this to the genetic level, that means they've got good genes. Wouldn't you want your children to benefit from good genes? Don't we know of families that's a very good family, all their children are good, that's a trustworthy family. Do you see what I'm saying? That's not a badmash family, right? That's a decent family. You want to get the genes. So if you're doing it for that reason, alhamdulillah. But if you're going to look until you're 50, then you've got a problem if you don't find that specific genetic coding, right? I'm not saying get into genetics, I'm just saying in general. Number four, wealth. There's nothing wrong with getting wealth, unless that's the reason. If it comes along and you can find one with that, alhamdulillah. Because wouldn't you want your children to benefit from the inheritance from that side as well? What's wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that. But the deen must be priority. And again, what's the deen here? A lot of people think deen for men is that they pray and they have a beard and so on. And for women, the deen is they cover and they pray. Akhlaq is not a big deal, generally. Since this is being said in the context of marriage, and the deen is not just salat and zakat and hajj, but it's also akhlaq. Akhlaq is probably the akhlaq and interaction, marital encounter and marital interaction is probably what's intended here. How do you find out something like this? Generally from the family. How the other sisters, how the aunts, how so on. Because generally you expect that they're going to be similar, although nowadays in the individualism that becomes difficult now. So if you can get a wife with all four, then nurun ala nur. If you can get with three, alhamdulillah. Those are not the only reasons, there are also other reasons. Likewise, from a woman's perspective, there are also things like, one woman said, I would never get married to somebody who can't speak English properly. And I think that's a fair point. If that's going to be an issue, it's a fair point. Because remember, the Islamic hierarchy is that the husband is the head of the household. For that person, the husband, to perform his role efficiently, he must have respect. If the wife is going to be, if you're going to force the girl or she's going to marry somebody she cannot respect, you've messed up the hierarchy. Can you see where problems go? That means for the man to be head of the household in the Islamic system, the wife has to respect him, which means he's probably more educated, probably older, and so on and so forth. MashaAllah. I better stop. That's a lot of questions. So, I don't want to talk about forced marriages and all that kind of stuff because I hope that doesn't happen here. Right? Because that's wrong in Islam anyway, and it's a recipe for disaster. So I think I'll stop there, and if I've left anything out or I didn't finish something, please ask your questions. I'll take some of these and I'll take some from you if you want to put your hand up and ask, inshallah. My personal private text message from a female colleague from work without my consent. He came over to my home without my knowledge, went behind my back. The text message was about an argument we had in the past. My husband says he loved me, but when he doesn't get things his way, he calls me a bitch and kuti. I'm learning spelling. Is this a question or like you're telling me a story? My husband and have a nikah done, but don't live. Somebody practicing a question here. Okay, let me read this and see if it's a question. My husband and I have a nikah done, I guess, but don't live together at the moment due to some challenges. I support myself and my kids from my previous marriage. No funds from him. My question is, does my husband have right to, I'm not sure what that says, seek and read? My request, please resend this. Written clearly, please. Otherwise, I can't answer it. Did anybody understand that? So I can, because it's a bit late for me.
Just asking, I think, what's the husband's rights? Because it's quite discussion.
Is that what they're saying?
What's the husband's rights?
Right to. My question is, does my husband has right to seek and read? But they're not his kids. They're her kids. Just send it again, please. I'm sure they can hear me. Please send it again. MashaAllah, good way of teaching, including issues, problems, etc. Jazakallah khair. Okay. Please talk about divorce, marrying divorcees, how to trust again, what to do when one spouse is willing to do anything to make a marriage work and the other one has given up totally and just doesn't care. Now that's a good question, right? Because we're dealing with real issues here. Firstly, divorcees, we need to sort our understanding of divorcees. This is a massive cultural problem. In my area, just locally from what I know, there are at least between 5 and 10 women that I know about who have been divorced at one time and have never gotten over it, and to such a degree that they are literally psychologically, mentally ill, right? They're just not good for anything in that sense. Some of them have children, others don't have children, and they're just a constant burden on everybody around them. I'm not saying that they're a burden in that sense, but the reason is that our community does not treat divorcees well. Number one, disproportionately blaming the woman over the husband. Men who are divorced, they can easily get married, more easily get married than a woman. So that's one problem. I know that women have actually set up a roadblock on their own, which I don't want to get into because it's very controversial, to stop people from remarrying divorcees. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, do you know how common it was to marry a divorcee? You couldn't stay single, it seemed. To such a degree that even when you're in your iddat, you would get proposals. Like as soon as you got divorced, you got a proposal. I don't think there were women that were just allowed to be left alone. You got a proposal. Allah mentions in the Quran that you're not allowed to do proposals when somebody's still in their iddat. Why would you need that hukm and command if people weren't caring for divorcees? Do you see what I'm saying? So there's a lot that has to be changed to sort this out. But I must say that we must stop treating women who are divorcees as though they're some kind of rejects. Right? It may not be their fault. And even if it was their fault, maybe they've learned a lesson. Because we all make mistakes. We need to give them a chance. I guess in the short time we have, that's as much as I can say on that topic right now. And when you say that one spouse is willing to do everything and another spouse just doesn't care, then unless you are waiting for a miracle, you probably want out. I've dealt with too many cases like this where, can I just have that? Yes, please. Too many cases where one side is hanging on and the other side wants out. Let it go. No, let this, please. Yeah. Because there's one guy, he met me in a Jazakallah. He met me in a program. And he said, Sheikh, I've been listening to your lectures and I want to speak to you. For the last 2-3 years, I've had so many problems. I need half an hour, 1 hour of your time. So I said, okay, give me a call. So when he called, he said, do you have 1 hour or something, half an hour? I said, let's start. Because everybody asked for an hour. But really, all we need to know is the last part. Right? They tell you their whole life and then the last part is the divorce. I just need to know the words they use in a divorce. That's all I need. I don't care what happened before it. Because it's irrelevant. So I said, okay, we don't have too much time, but I want you to distill down to the main 2 points. What do you think it is? Because remember, most problems are going to be symptoms of the deeper problem. You get irritated quickly because there's a deeper why? Because there's no sexual fulfillment. So everything else is irritating you. Jazakallah. You're getting irritated about everything because it's money problems. You're not getting enough to spend. Or the husband is having tough work, looking for work. So that's why everything is getting irritating. Remember, it always comes down to a few issues. So this is what he said. He said, my wife has left me 3 years ago with the children and all the rest of it. And I said, okay, so what? He said, I haven't divorced her. She's asking for a divorce. I haven't divorced her because I wanted to come back. I said, don't you get it? Like, what are you waiting for? A miracle? If there was a miracle, it would have happened by now. Stop torturing her, let her go. Think of what the Quran says. Allah says, وَإِن يَتَفَرَّقَا يُغْنِ اللَّهُ كُلًّا مِّن سَعَتِهِ. If they do separate, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will enrich both of them through His ampleness. And basically what's happening to this guy is he's holding on, but it's depressing him. He can't sleep at night. It's messing up his job, everything. Because he's hung on it. Give it up. You'll take a bit of adjustment and you'll find somebody else. There was another couple that were very close to me and they had problems. The wife wanted to stay, the husband didn't. He listens to me. I told him, it's probably because you're in your mother's house. Move out. In London, he took a separate place. He rented a place, paid a lot of money for it, tried it for 3 months. He said, seriously, I do not like her. There's no love. I don't think I'll ever like her. Then I had to explain. I said, okay, divorce. I know it's difficult, but there has to, what I generally say in any of these situations, give yourself a period of time. Whether that be 3 months, 2 weeks, 6 months, some reasonable amount of time. If you make your du'as in there, you try to get other people involved, count, whatever. If it doesn't work, let it go. You know, one guy came to me and he said, I've got this issue and so on. I said, so why don't you divorce her? He says, no, I'm not going to divorce her. I don't want to do the haram. I was like, that is not haram now. Initially it would have been haram for you to do if it was for no reason. But now that it's all broken down, now it's you're torturing her. So now it's haram for you to carry on. People have all sorts of weird torturing ways that they do and they call it halal. I am a single mum and would like to get married with parents. Blessings, okay. However, parents not supporting me and I don't want to disappoint them. I have known this person, a single dad, for years and want to make things right Islamically. Please advise, worried about disappointing parents, my own Islamic rights. These require more details, but the main thing in here as a general outline is that, again, you give yourself some time. It's always good to try to find, forget as a divorcee, even as a single person this question applies to. They want to marry somebody, their parents doesn't want to marry them. First question you're going to ask, like in all honesty, are your parents unreasonable? Are they oppressive? Are they biased? If you can prove that by getting mashwara from other elders, that yes, your parents are just never going to let you marry somebody decent, because they just want you to marry their nephew or niece, then in that case, you may get a fatwa that you should just do whatever you have to do, and your nikah would be valid. But otherwise, are you being, why can you not find somebody that is decent? Now, of course, if you're a divorcee, your chances get restricted, so parents should be a bit more open. Some parents are one parent told me to find something for his daughter. She was 23 or 24, alima. I found one or two, and he said, "No, they're not from our part of the village. They're not from part." Can you ask that Maulana, right? We know his family. But that Maulana doesn't want to get married. This was 7 years ago, he's still not married. And his daughter's still not married. It's just, and what I think what I found out later is that he's not even telling his daughter about these proposals. He's just deciding. That's oppression. A friend of mine recently, attended his daughter's wedding. And I said, "Why are you sending her to Preston? Or Blackburn or Batley, I don't know. I'm never going to send my daughter. I've only got one daughter, I'm not going to send her." He goes, "Maulana, don't say that." He said, "We were not going to send our daughter, but circumstances." Right? Circumstances. So think proactively right from the beginning. So all I would say here is that give yourself some time. Figure out whether you can find somebody otherwise. If it's a case of you're going to fall into zina or not, or whatever, there's a lot of factors. Because you want to keep your parents on your side as far as possible. Because this marriage may break down. And where are you going to come back to? You need your parents. You can't, But if your parents, as the ulama say, there are zalim parents. For example, Imam Ahmad rahmatullah alayhi, somebody came to him and said, "My father is telling me to divorce my wife. Should I divorce her?" He said, "No." He says that Umar radiallahu anh told his son, Abdullah, to divorce his wife. He said, "Okay, if your father's like Umar, and you're like Abdullah ibn Umar, then that's fine." Do you see what I'm saying? Because your father could be mistaken in the reason, he's being selfish. So these are things that are very difficult to give a general answer for, because there are so many variances. We want to protect both the rights of the parents and your rights. So I can only give you general. You might want to contact me directly with the specific details of this. Are we allowed to have more than one wife? What are the rulings around this? Every man will have 2 women from this world in paradise. I guess he was writing while I was speaking. What does that mean? How many hurs and will they have in paradise? And could you give us the name of the dua to help you in marriage?
I don't give
No, you ask me straight away. You don't write things. You just up the ball dete. Yeah. So the thing is that you have to understand it's illegal in this country to have 2 formal wives. All right? So understand that. However, in Islam, it's allowed to have more than 1 nikah. Right? To be essentially married to more than one. So, if you're asking, are we allowed, what do you mean? In Islam, you're allowed, yes. Right? In Islam, you're allowed to get married to more than one. All I would say is that don't spoil your first marriage because of the second. What's the benefit? You don't know how the second one may be. She's promising you everything right now. Or you think. Do you know what the love triangle is, by the way? The love triangle. When you fall in love with something, anything or anyone. So imagine this as a triangle. You are here, right? You are here, and then the triangle like this, right? On the bottom end, the opposite bottom end is the object of your love, reality. And the top part of the triangle is your perception of that object of your love. Do you understand? So you will never know your love properly until you know them properly. Generally, you fall in love with the object. It's not even love. It's actually infatuation or inclination, depending on the stage. In Arabic, in the Arab tradition, we have about 30 or so stages of love. I asked a friend of mine who's an expert. He's got a PhD in love. I'm not joking. It's called Love in the Quran. you can download it online for free. It's Prince Ghazi of Jordan, right? He's done, that's his PhD. So there's somebody I was dealing with, and he claims to be in love and all the rest of it. I said, how do we know he's in love? He asked me a few questions. He says, can he eat? Can he sleep at night? Yes, yes. Well, he's not in full love yet. Next question I asked, can you stop loving something? Because this is a big issue. Number one, I don't think it's love, it's always infatuation first. The only way to stop loving somebody is to start thinking of their bad. Every bad you can think of, to pull your nafs away from it. But remember, whenever you're infatuated with something, you're infatuated with a perception of them. And the reality may be totally different. And that's why I say a lot of guys, they get excited about other things. They're going to spoil the first marriage, which is fine, which was fine. What's the point? And then the second one may be spoiled. That's why I think if anybody's going to consider this, they need to make sure that they have the first one on board, which is a very difficult task, but not impossible necessarily, right? And number two, unless they've got major issues where they just not, and then they need to stay together for convenience or whatever, there are certain issues. But just remember, it's illegal in this country. So I'm talking in general because you may have people listening wherever, right? And this is about two women of paradise. This is becoming very man-centric, but what is it? What's the ayat in the Quran? Zawjan. What's the ayat in the Quran? The two wives of the world will be human wives. So your own wife, or if you're only married to one, and another unmarried woman, you can choose. There will be bachelors who will go to paradise, they get a choice. Women who are single or divorced, they get a choice. In fact, one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ asked the Prophet ﷺ, if a woman has gone through many husbands, they've died or they've divorced, they've died. Because if they're divorced, they're no longer connection anyway, right? Which one will she get? Said the best of them in akhlaq, in character. Can you see how beneficial character is? That even if a woman has been married to three, as they were in time of Prophet ﷺ, there were some women who were married to 3-4 different people. Which one will they get in paradise? Because remember, women can only have one man. Now you're going to think, well, why can't women have more than one? That is a question. So that is a question that I've explored for a very long time, and I took a survey of men. And I can do it now again. If I ask men, what is your one main indulgence or desire? Whether you're old or young, right? It is generally going to be what? Shopping at Aldi. No, right? What is it going to be? Huh? Right. It's going to be. If I ask that to women, in all honesty, I've done this. I did it in Sweden, I did it in England, I did it in America. The first thing, and this isn't always, it comes down to three things. Two primary things and a third thing. One is beauty. One is beauty. They want beauty. That's like the primary thing that they want. If that doesn't represent you, that's fine. I'm just talking about majority. And number two, they want security and care. That's their nature. They want beauty and they want security and care. A husband who provides that. If you're a husband who doesn't provide that, you're creating an imbalance in your wedding, in your marriage. And the third thing some people have said is children. But that's an offshoot of marriage and all the rest of it, I think. Yes, there will be a few women who will say, no, I want more than one. Personally, I don't think there's a place for that in paradise. So that's quite critical, right? So that's how men will get two wives. And then hur depends on what you've done. Because hurs are provided for different things, for different virtues, different reasons. So we've read hadith up to 70. Allah knows best. But not everybody's going to have 70 necessarily. There's different numbers depending on what you've done and so on. Okay? But you have to remember, it doesn't matter about these hurs, the wives of this world are going to be the most beautiful of the lot. Right? If that's any consolation. Okay, this is a single advice. This is a private advice. What is the powerful Rabbana dua? Rabbana, okay, how do I tell you this? It's Rabbana, everybody read it once at least. Rabbana hablana min azwajina wa dhurriyatina qurrata a'yun waj'alna lilmuttaqina imama. Okay, it looks like these private ones I'll just leave because it looks like they probably don't want me to mention it. I've done this one. Before I take these ones that have come from upstairs, anybody here who's got a question? Yes, brother. Yeah, Surah Al-Furqan. Surah Al-Furqan, 18th Subara. What's the ayat? Sorry, 19th Subara, end of the ayat. 19th, which ayat is it of Surah Al-Furqan? Just check, it's about few ayats from the end. Right? Rabbana hablana min azwajina. Learn that and just keep reading it. Believe me, it's a miracle. It's worked hugely for me as well. Any other questions here? Yes. Can I have the jug of water, please?
I just need an advice if a sister is looking for a prospective husband, right? What is the Sharia which allows them they can talk to each other, see each other, as to see the compatibility? So what guidelines would you recommend?
So are they allowed to see and talk, and how much?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so a lot of people ask this question, are we only allowed to speak once? Ayat number 74 of Surah Al-Furqan. Surah Al-Furqan 74. Okay? Surah Al-Furqan 74. So the question brother is asking is that if when you're looking at a prospective spouse, are you allowed to look at them? Can you look at them a second time? Like first time, maybe you were just adrenaline rush, you didn't realize what you were seeing or whatever. Can I go and look at it again? Right? And number two, can I speak second time or a third time? So remember, the point is not once, twice or thrice, it's about need. Because men and women interaction is not allowed on an informal level, but it is allowed on a formal level. So for example, if you have to speak to somebody to ask directions, if you have to speak to somebody on the phone when you got a problem with Vodafone or 3 and you call up and it's a woman, you speak to them, don't you? You don't go informal chat, do you? You're talking formally, that's allowed. For example, let's just say there was one masjid, a woman came in with somebody to become Muslim. So our few brothers that were sitting there outside of namaz time. Said, La hawla, we can't talk to women. They didn't say that. They said, no, there's no women here right now. Take them to such and such a person's house. Can you see how messed up that idea is? It is as if these people do not speak to women at all. Or they think it's haram to speak to women entirely. It's haram to informally speak for no reason. Jazakallah. Right? So, imagine if that woman died without taking shahada. Do you see what I'm saying? So what we have to understand in men and women interaction is that you're allowed to speak for a need. You can't create a need to speak. Like men might say, I want to talk to that sister, so let me create a need. Right? Don't get bad ideas here. So if you want to get married to somebody and you in the first meeting was just 5 minutes, you just had quick few chats, and now you're like, okay, you go back home, you do istikhara. Yeah, I think, but I need to ask a few more questions. Now, do you need to physically sit and speak? Can you not do it through email? Could you do it through WhatsApp? Could you do it through somebody else? The main thing here, Jazakallah khair, where are you producing these from? Oh, okay. So, what you want to do, because I'll tell you what the problem is, right? We're not trying to be overly strict. It's actually harmful the more times you meet. Because if you end up finding out that it's not going to work, but you've developed an emotional attachment, you're going to be severely punished. You're going to be punishing yourself. I've just dealt with too many people in emotional attachment. They know they can't get married, but they're trying to wean each other off. And I'm saying that's your problem. You can't help her, she can't help you. So cut ties. The best way to remove emotional attachment is change your phone number. Cut ties completely. There's no other way. Lots of people, they keep, I just have to comfort her. Like, well, you don't need to comfort her. You are her problem. Do you see what I'm saying? You want to do it in a way that minimizes the possibility of emotional attachment. You need to keep it professional and formal so that you can make an intellectual decision. Because once the emotion gets in, you can't make an intellectual decision. You see what I'm saying? And you want to get the right decision with istikhara. So that is what I'm saying. So if you do have to speak twice or thrice, that could be allowed in certain circumstances. Because there's no like ek hi martaba jaiz or something like that. It's just about need. And again, if there's a genuine need, then but you want to keep that as many, as less and as distant as possible. I married 2.5 years ago. We have no issues and generally a happy marriage. However, my husband is unable to perform sexually and I'm still a virgin. I really want to have children, but my husband refuses to seek medical help. Please advise. So look, if it's a private question, please write at the top, private, so I don't read it out. Right? Because at the end I've got an email. So now I'm thinking that maybe it was supposed to be that, but I guess it's beneficial for others, this one, right? So the thing in here, what Islam tells you, the Sharia tells you, is that if this person, if the wife complains about this to the judge. Now in this case, we don't have Muslim judges as such. We have what they call panchayats, not panchat, panchayats. It's a totally different idea, right? These, what they call Sharia arbitration panels. And I would say we need to stop calling them Sharia courts, because that's a very ominous term for people outside. It's a Sharia arbitration, that's all it is. It doesn't have any rights, except when you give them administration rights. So you go to them, and what they do is they give the husband 1 year to sort himself out. If he sorts himself out, alhamdulillah, fine. If he doesn't, then she has the right to separate. So you have to decide in this case, whoever you are, that you're going to have to take it to an arbitration, which means, what is the closest Sharia arbitration here? Dewsbury. So there's Dewsbury, there's the Birmingham Sharia Mufti, Safraz and those guys, and there's others. You'll have to take it to them. If he's not willing to, or you can basically get your father or his father to, you're going to have to make some movement. You're going to have to make some movement, all right, to do that. And he's given a year. If he doesn't sort himself out, then you've got a right to come apart. So, obviously you're only asking this question because you have a desire, right? You need it to fulfilled. So I'm not going to tell you just do sabr, because it's difficult. If you did sabr, that's up to you, right? You'll be rewarded, but that answer doesn't always work for people, right? You've already done enough sabr in that sense. You can carry on doing sabr, but these are your rights basically, okay? I've been married for 5 years, no kids. I have done sabr with my husband. He gives me silent treatment. He does not communicate with me. We never resolve any problems. He's childish and has hurt me very much recently with his bad mood and silent treatment. I have returned to my mum's house now for 4 weeks. He says he wants me back. I'm scared he will not change and he does not treat me like a wife, not responsible for me. Do istikhara. Do istikhara, and if you feel that you want to give him another chance, make mashwara. You know him better than anybody else. You've been married to him 5 years. Right, that's like a maturity period almost. But he may have learned. He may. It's up to you. What I would suggest you do is that you make istikhara, and if you do go back to him, then go back to him with the condition that he gives you the right for one divorce under certain circumstances. Which basically means that you're going to him, but if it doesn't work out, then at least you've got a right to get out of it. What we call tafweedut talaq. This is probably a place, because I remember, I think it was Hazrat, our Hazrat Maulana Yusuf Mutala Sahib rahmatullah alayhi, who had suggested that to somebody who was in an abusive relationship. And then it was like, okay, they want you to get back. So he said, okay, fine. If you want to go back, have this condition. So at least you can get out, because then what husbands will do is they'll punish you by not divorcing you. Because you're not willing to go back to them and say, I'm not going to divorce you. Then you have to go through again to the Sharia court, which takes years and years and years. These arbitration men, they take months sometimes. So rather than that, if he wants you back, you can make that condition if you want to. Best that you give the right of the divorce to your father or the Maulana or somebody, not yourself. Okay, if you need more information, you can contact the ulama for that. He is not willing to pick me up from my mum's house, showing me that he still hasn't grown up. I don't know if that means grown up or not. I mean, that's your understanding of it, but it's bad enough, whether it's grown up or not. I have problems with words, that's all. And taking responsibility for me, what do I do? When is it okay to give up? Do I give him more chances? How much more time shall I give him to make this marriage work? Again, it depends. Do you have children? Right? Do you want him? There's so many factors. Nobody can tell you exactly what to do. All we can do is empower you. All we can do is help you think. What I generally tell people in these cases is write down all the possibilities, all your options. I leave and finish, or I go back and I give a chance, or I don't go back, or I do go back and fully. And you write the pros and cons of each one. And continue making istikhara, and inshallah Allah will make one of them stand out. That, and you make mashwara with somebody who you trust, based on your findings, and then you tawakkal ala Allah and you do your job. And then if Allah does does have separation there, Allah will enrich both of you. Let it go, if it's going to be so bad. We have that in the Sunnah as well, where that was the case. Yes.
Why is divorce rates rising in Muslim countries? For North Africa, there is a huge rise in premarital marriage.
Okay, why are divorce rates rising in Muslim countries? The brother's asking.
We always
Yeah.
thought that this is our family values would always remain strong, and
Yeah.
we always thought Western society breaks down family barriers. But in Egypt, a recent survey said that nearly 30% of marriages break down in the first year.
Okay, number one, probably the reason why there's less number of divorces in the West is because I think the statistic is that less than 50% are actually married in the West. So proportionate wise, it's less. Egypt has a huge population. So just Cairo alone has more than 20 million population. There's no place to walk there, right? That place is teeming with things, right? Very nice place, but now I have some theories about this. I don't know the answer of why there's more divorce, but I have some answers. You know the traditional structure where the wife was just a housewife. The man was qawwam. He was the one responsible. There was a lot of pressure from society and the culture that you needed to carry on. Both from the man's perspective that you do not divorce, and from the woman's perspective that you need a husband, where you're going to go. You can't go back to your parents' house all the time. That's why they got you married. Especially in a lot of countries, they get you married because they can't take care of you. Nowadays, because I've dealt with women, there's one Maulana, big Maulana, and his wife. And she's like, I got my own job, right? I work. 5 years ago, maybe not, but now I can walk away from this. And I'm self-subsisting. With women's liberation and women working and becoming independent, which in some sense may be a positive thing. But one of the problems I've seen from that is that the hierarchy is messed up. Now when there's a small issue, each partner is going to think, I can walk away from this. I'm self-subsisting. I'll get single mother benefits. I can be looked after. I just think it's easier to get out because the culture and everything has changed, which is a massive detriment. And of course there are other reasons. I'm not a researcher in that particular issue, but this is what my thoughts are. I think because it's a Muslim country, because if you look at Muslim, and again, we can't really have a proper discussion about this, who we're comparing Egypt to. Egypt is just one Muslim country, right? Maybe there's one or two other Muslim, but what are we comparing it to? I think it's across the board, because even in England, among the less than 50% that do get married, even there the divorce rates have skyrocketed. I personally feel it's because the setup of the marriage, the marital home is messed up. There's independence on both sides. And that's just messed it up, yes.
What would you say to registration of nikahs?
Good idea. Registration of nikah, if a woman feels that, because what happens is that a man can just do nikah with two witnesses in a masjid or anywhere, and there will be nikah, it'll be halal. And many women get abused like that. Because for the man, he just says talaq and walks away. Or doesn't say talaq and walk away. He can get married to 3 more, Islamically. He doesn't even have to care about her, and it's not registered. But for the woman, she's suffering for the rest of her life. That's why, in one masjid I know in England, in London, they actually insist that if you want to do a nikah here, you must get it registered. They make exceptions in some cases, but otherwise they want to do that. Because then it's registered, so that there's a responsibility. So I can't say one way or the other that you must do it this way or that way, but I could say if there's a woman who thinks she could be abused, then she should get registered, at least. Yes?
What application would you recommend to husband and wife to increase the love?
To increase the love, رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا. I'll tell you something. There's a Maulana and his wife, she's an alima. And mashallah, they're doing very well. And they're in a position of envy. You know, people will look at them as a very happy and successful couple. So she started doing is she started reading Surah Al-Baqarah and insisting on completing it like every 2 to 3 days. And she said, since I started doing that, everything just feels much better. Because there's a lot of hasad out there. And just generally, especially if you're a successful person, even if you're not, some people do that. Now don't ask me why that happens more in Muslim communities than it does in others, right? It's probably because we understand it better maybe, or other reasons. But the main thing is that you do your du'as, in general your protection du'as. And while du'as are there, like Rabbana hab lana min azwajina, and anybody got any other du'as? That's generally like I'm basically just in need of whatever good you can throw at me basically, right? That's general dua. Specific dua, I think tahajjud, after tahajjud dua, but I think what really matters is creating a love bank. Do you know what a love bank is? Have you guys got a love bank in your marriages? Do you guys have an account in a love bank? No? Do you know what that is? A love bank is that you keep doing good for one another. Right? You keep making dua for one another, but you keep doing good acts. Whether that be a gift, whether that be a khidmah or whatever. What you're doing there is you're depositing into your love bank. Okay? Every good you do. And it has to be consistent. You don't just do big deposit one day and then the rest of the days you don't worry about it. You know, it's like, is it worth on Sunday I'm going to brush my teeth for 4 hours? And then I don't have to do, 1 hour, and on the rest of the 6 days I don't have to brush because I don't have time. Is that going to be any benefit? No, you brush it every day for 2 minutes. That's going to be beneficial. So what husband needs to do for the wife and wife for the husband is constant good. Now inevitably when there's going to be a problem, shaitan puts into your head, he hates me, or she hates me, or she's got this or that. If you have that love bank, it's like al-insanu abdul ihsan, right? The human being is a slave to favors. No man, look at what he does for me. That is going to offset the hurt and the harm. So increase your love bank. It works wonders, along with du'as. Tahajjud dua. Somebody called me once, he says, give me a dua for this. I said, the best dua for that is get up at tahajjud and do dua. He said, no, I want a taweez. I want it to be easy. I just put it around my neck, khalas, finish. It's constant. But this dua works wonder. Have you guys just... Yes, uncle.
Assalamu alaikum Maulana.
Salam wa rahmatullah.
I'm working in media. I work in Manchester Asian Radio. My name is Mr. Salim Karolia. We have in our community, a lot of telephone conversation when I do program. You know, we recently got Sadi, marriage. Nikah is officially done. And we do, wife goes to husband house, whatever it is. And now, in our community, they doing, say, all right, we nikah doing, but they're not,
Rukhsati.
They pick rukhsati in 6 months' time. Now, why they making such a lot of time? This is like extra money, spending money, both parties. Because you see, the expensive doing from the girl size and the boy size, exactly same. Or they might be sort of 50-50.
So are you worried about why they do rukhsati after 6 months?
6 months or year.
Oh, a year. Okay, all right.
But this is what Islamic law says. Once your nikah is married, that officially your wife, your husband and wife.
Yes. But nobody's denying that, are they?
Yeah. Well, why are you making this extra a problem, or in communities?
Okay, Jazakallah khair. The whole question is that if you get married, then they do rukhsati afterwards. Personally, I don't encourage that at all, because when you're far apart, I just dealt with the case last week, right? It's caused a problem. And because you're not physically there, you can't, the only thing you can use are and they're doing it over text, which is like the worst thing you can do. So in text, you can only show you can only show words. There's no other emotion you can show. Basically, he's longing for you and it's causing a problem. I don't believe in long engagements, but we can't say long engagements are wrong all the time. The Prophet ﷺ to Aisha got his rukhsati after, I think, 3 years. He got married with her when she was 6, when she was in Makkah, and there was reason there obviously because she was too young, right? And she came into his house in Medina Munawwara at the age of 9. So we can't say that it's against Sunnah, but we can say it's mostly discouraged unless necessary. So this one bichari mother called me and she's saying, this woman got married and now the husband and they're not together. So why did they get married? Well, because she had to finish why couldn't they just wait? Was she going to commit zina? Couldn't you find somebody locally? So I don't advise it, but we can't say it's wrong either because it does exist in the Sunnah. And in some cases, you do need to have rukhsati later. One couple came to me, they had marriage, their rukhsati was going to be later, Gujarati man, Bangladeshi woman. And the father was insisting on the son that he cannot take her to anywhere private. He can go out, he can meet her and everything, but he can't go anywhere private with her, or he can't basically sleep with her. So now this wife is saying to me, and I'm being open here, this wife is saying to me, what's the problem? It's not haram, it's halal, and he's acting on his father's advice. Basically, his father don't want them to have a child before they do rukhsati. I was just like, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't have got married. Because he said that this was all agreed. And now, because his father made this new rule, now he can't do it. Maybe the father should say, use contraception. Like, I'm being honest. How can you tell your son not to have sexual intercourse? You get these people. So, but as I said, we can't go to any extreme. One woman came to me in Canada, she's a convert. She said, you sheikhs, your ulama, you need to make it necessary for all men to take AIDS tests. I said, I can't do that. Maybe we can do in certain cases where you got a doubt. And yeah, if you got a doubt, you want to tell them because you think then fine. But we can't make that a standard like, hey, you must have an AIDS test. But one thing we should make necessary, you know what that is? A marriage class. They have that in Malaysia. Before you do nikahs from now on, make sure they read my book. Or Maulana Abdur Rahim Sahib's book, any book on marriage. Or you do, when's marriage season starts in May, right? So in March, you need to do a marriage seminar every year. And anybody who's getting married, just half a day seminar, or 1 day seminar. You must get, otherwise you're not going to get certificate from here. We need to make that, I think, because there's just too many people. People don't know what they're getting into. Right? I told you, right? People don't know what they're getting into. So make that necessary. That's one thing we should make necessary. Right? It is now common practice for potential rishtas to meet in coffee shops. What is the Islamic viewpoint with this practice? Again, it just depends on how it's done. If the parents are there and it's done in the right way, then it's okay. Whether it be in a coffee shop over a coffee or a latte or in the house. It just depends. It depends. Let's not reduce it to a coffee shop, or it's about what's necessary and whether the conditions are being met. If that's the only place that you can meet, you don't have a decent place at home, then, but if you're saying just meeting privately in coffee shops, then that's a problem. You see what I'm saying? Du'as to read ma'mulat for pious children. That dua, what I read, is for children and wives. It's a solid, right? And what's the dua for pious children? The same one. I'm just answering quickly because it is getting late and the food is ready apparently. Right? It's been ready for a while. How can women get married if she is not that beautiful and men are looking for beauty as essential part of marriage? That's, as I said, you will find somebody. Right? You will find somebody because beauty is not the same for everybody. If you are getting paranoid because you are not as beautiful as somebody else, which you're comparing yourself to, which the modern media is telling you, you got a problem. There's another lecture I've done, it's online on zamzamacademy.com. You should basically the primary message that the media gives to teenagers is that you need to be beautiful, but you're never going to be beautiful enough. How do you give two messages? Because everybody they show as beautiful is actually beyond reality. They take the best models who are already very beautiful, then they take them, make them up, then they photograph them, and then they airbrush them. So it's basically beyond reality, and then they say that's how you must be. So you get depressed, I can't be like that. Don't get depressed, ask Allah. Allah made you like that, Allah will find you somebody. One friend of mine in America, may Allah bless him, he's passed away now. He said he had a friend who's got a wife who's, for some cultures, darkness is a calamity, right? Whereas it's not a calamity for others, it just depends. So they would mess him around that, what do you see in her? It was a friend, casually, right? I'm not saying it's right to do that. This is what they would do. He says, Ismail Bhai, take my eyes and look at her. Subhanallah, how can you complain to somebody else about? So do not get depressed. Your Allah is who created you. Your Allah will provide you. Just do the du'as and do it the right way. Don't let the shaitan depress you.
Sheikh, is prenup agreements allowed in Islam?
Agreement about what? Pre-agreements about what?
Prenuptial agreements.
Prenuptial agreements. They're allowed in Islam. Okay. If the woman's coming with something, the husband's coming with something, in fact, it's probably, if you are going with something, in the UK law is unfair, biased towards women, right? They will take half of your stuff, right?
60%.
Or whatever, 70, 80, yes, 100%, right? And they'll take the children, right? They'll take the children and you will not see them. I know at least 10 people, among them several ulama, who've not seen their children for years and years and years, right? I don't want to get into that subject. It's actually on Zamzam Akari. I've talked about it. It's in my book as well, right? So prenuptial agreements in here should be allowed, because Islam has already an agreement that she only gets a certain amount of money, right? Which is for the iddat period and so on, and for children's upkeep. But if you're scared that it's going to be otherwise, you can have a prenuptial agreement. That's just a general answer. It depends on the devil is in the detail. All right? Yes. Yeah.
This is a major issue, and especially one is very popular, especially because you must know it's the Sikh community in Pakistan.
Yep.
They never give them notes, but they take all of the boys. And in some societies as well, in the Arab world, we have this situation as well. Europe has gone past that. There is no such thing as an Austrian or a German or
Europe
French.
hasn't gone past it. We are in Europe, but we haven't gone past it.
Yes.
Right? So let me repeat the brother's question. He's saying that there's many of our cultures which still insist that their daughters, especially for daughters, they get them married within their own culture. They will never give them out. They may take your girls, but they won't give you their girls, right? And then he mentioned the particular ethnicity as well, which I don't need to repeat because it doesn't make a difference. What can we do about that? Number one, to some level, I don't see a problem with it. To some level. Because harmony in culture just makes life easier between extended families. In terms of traditions, food, language, and so on. Right? That's at one level. But at an obsessive level, it's a problem. Where you can't find anything and you're just being over the top. The solution to this is going to come in about 2 to 3 generations. You'll just have to wait for it. The reason why Europe, if you mean by Europe, non-Asians or non-Turks or whatever, I mean, it just depends. How do you define Europe today? Right? With the whole Brexit issue and so on. How do you define Europe? If you're talking about Gore, right, who are originally from either Anglo-Saxon or Roman or Greek or Frankish backgrounds or whatever, they've had years and years and years to basically assimilate. That's why if you go to South Africa, where the Muslim community, your Indian community, Surat, Bharuch, Northern Gujarat, Memon, Miabai, Kutchi, everything, it's all fine there. Because they're at the 4th generation they're at the 5th generation. It's all finished. They all speak English. They all eat polony, right? And so on. You just need a few more generations where the staple becomes fish and chips and No, never. You know what I'm saying? This is just the fact of the closeness to your culture that you still have. And if it's done for the right reason, I don't see a problem with it. But if it gets obsessive, there's a problem with that. Otherwise, convenience. It's just a convenience that you have similar cuisine, similar adat, similar customs. That's okay. But if you are just oppressing your children by not letting them get married, even if there's a decent person, then that's a problem. But they are increasing. Alhamdulillah, we see so many cross marriages now. And you know the community you're talking about? The problem with them is, forget giving outside, they won't even give to non-relatives. They're promised from a young age that they're going to get married to their cousin. In some of them. Which I talk to them about all the time. And if that's in your family, then that is really bad. Your child, before he gets to 12, 13, he's already given to somebody. And then I've seen kufr from this. One woman called me, she's 40 years old. And she asked another question, and then she said, I'm married to a non-Muslim. I said, what happened? She said, basically, my parents forced me to marry. And she was from that community. Nothing wrong with that community. I'm just saying that this is a problem in that community. They forced me to marry somebody. Eventually, I got out. And then I was just like, they tell you it's Islamic. They force you to get married to your cousin, saying that's the Islamic thing to do. They've not taught you any other Islam. So then you think Islam is to blame for your miseries. So then you lose your Islam. Alhamdulillah, this one was coming back. That's why it's very dangerous to do that. Okay, these are the last four questions, and then we're done, okay? I'll take this one, I'll take yours. I have been married to my husband for 13 years. I am older than him and have health issues, meaning sexual life and is limited. He has married again. I am struggling to accept and he is becoming abusive verbally. Please advise. See, these are very big questions and they take time to answer. If I give a short answer, it may not be fair on you. But what I would say is that what the first question would I ask is, was he abusive before? Has he become abusive now? How has your reaction been? I know it's tough. For most women, this is not easy, right? But how has your reaction been? See what I'm saying? How has your reaction been? And so on. There's a lot of variables in here. That's why it's very difficult to advise directly. So I would say you contact your local ulama with a specific question. If you want to contact me, you can contact me through zamzamacademy.com. But it'd be unfair unless I spent 15 minutes going back, because there's a lot of variables here of why that's happening and what's the way forward now. My daughter has seen many guys, though, but yet has found, I can't read this, this is too posh for me to read. Let me take that question first.
I don't know if you've covered this previously because I came late, but to what extent is it necessary for the wife to serve the in-laws and live with the in-laws if she's not happy to do that?
To what extent is it necessary to serve the in-laws? Well, no alim will tell you it's necessary to serve them, all right? But if you're coming from that culture, then you better make that condition or don't get married into that community, because it becomes a social obligation almost, all right? So there's no point getting married and then saying, I can't do it. But what happens in a lot of places, they'll say that, no, we'll move you out, but then that doesn't happen. And that's the worst part. So, technically she's not obliged. However, if somebody does, they get a huge reward. And many do. They have no problems about it. It just depends on how the mother-in-law is or the father-in-law is. So all I would tell in-laws, the parent in-laws, is that if you want your daughter-in-law to serve you, then you need to create the environment for that. You need to have that loving environment. Otherwise, you're not going to. Now, there are some daughter-in-laws who are just problematic. They just don't want to be, right? They're just on another level. So there are so many variations in this case. Generally, what the ulama mentioned from their observation is that it's generally the parent-in-laws that are the aggressors, not the one who's coming in. Because she's in a vulnerable position. She's in a strange home, whereas they've got everything going in their way. So I think you just have to, it's a very weird, you know what the problem, I've done a bit of study into the mindset of a mother-in-law. Because until now, this is my son. He's only mine. I'm the only woman in his life, right? Who can control him. Sisters are there, but now this wife is coming in and taking a share of that. It's a very personal thing. Why else is it a problem? right? Especially if the son-in-law doesn't play a very good game. The son-in-law's job is the most difficult one. And in my book, I've actually given suggestions, because somebody said, give suggestions. So I gave suggestions that he needs to basically comfort the mother and make her feel special. He needs to make his wife feel special. He's got a very tough game. So if you are going to bring your wife home, you're going to have to learn a lot of negotiation. Just this, then I'll come to you. Why do men from back home? So just tell me, where is back home for you? Because personally for me, this is home, right? Unless some other country is back home for you. I love India, by the way. I love to go to India. We've got a house there. I don't mind going there. I love going there. But this is home for me, by the way. So if you're home where you're thinking to retire, then this is correct. Otherwise, get your facts right. Otherwise, you'll always be seen as a foreigner. I'm not telling you to do anything different. I'm just telling you to get that, where is home, okay? Always abuse, why do men from back home always abuse loads? How do we deal with it? My friends are in the same position. They and their generations want us to lose our minds. Parents and own families are not supportive. I think this is a gross exaggeration. And there must be a term for this. It's like, because you and your little, people, Gujaratis come late, right? I'm not saying they do, but I'm saying if they do, then you say all Muslims are like that. The Turks aren't like that. The Malaysians aren't like that. Do you see what I'm saying? Don't generalize. It's unfair to generalize. You can say, I know a number of them. You can't say they all do that. Maybe it's the few in your family that you know. But why do they do it? I don't know, but we need to sort it out. Like, I can't tell you why they do it. They're probably coming from a village culture where that's the thing to do. Remember, domestic abuse, a friend of mine, we got married around the same time. And one day he calls me after a year or something. He goes, Maulana, I hit my wife. I was like, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. He's obviously distraught now, right? He regrets it. Why did he hit his wife? I've never hit my wife. Do you see what I'm saying? And the only reason I can think is because he's probably seen somebody else do it, his parents do it. It's because you learn from your role models, you learn from what you've seen. So you think that's the way to deal with the case. Do you see what I'm saying? I never saw my dad hit my wife, his wife, my mother, alhamdulillah. I don't ever recall it. He may have, but I don't ever recall it. But I've just made it doesn't matter what she does or says, that will never be the case. Likewise, the word divorce will never be in the vocabulary. The reason why divorces slip out is because you've been thinking about it. Otherwise, lots of people get angry on their wife, but they never say divorce. Or it just came out. I've been angry on my wife so many times, it doesn't mean it came out. Why did it come out? It's because there's a lot of people, when somebody does something, they swear, but others don't. Why? Because it's in your subconscious. You've been contemplating it. It's something next time she does that, that's what I'm going to say. So then it came out. Just take it out of your vocabulary. So anyway, we're at the end of it, so that needs to be sorted out anyway, right? Because that's not the Islamic way of doing it. Some cultures just have a problem. We have negatives in culture, we have some positives. How do you deal with a husband having issues with your mum parents when they are only trying to help? How do you answer that question? You have to see other parents really trying to help. You think they're trying to help. Maybe they are trying to help, but maybe he's been burnt before, or maybe he's got preconceived, maybe he's had history, and now it won't work. These things need, really detailed discussions and answers, because there's so much variables. And while I could give you a general answer, it may not be really to what you want. So I think that's it. Jazakallah khair for sitting around and asking the questions.
Yeah, sorry, Sheikh. So I got a question on behalf of brother who went through a divorce. Now his ex-wife, she's asking for 100% of his resources, and so he needs to know Islamically how should it deal with it, and also would like to know about the custody of the children. Who's got custody of the children? So she's basically using the UK laws to sort of get the resources.
Okay, so you see, the thing here is that there are a lot of people in this position. There's one guy I know, he's got assets of 4 million. She wants 2 million plus allowances every month of I don't know how many thousands for the rest of their life, right? The problem is that when you say Islamically, what do you mean Islamically? Because I can tell you what his right and her right is Islamically, which is that all he owes her is during the iddat, that period, he has to look after her. And then it's mustahab when you divorce, as much acrimony as there is, to give a gift of a suit to the wife. Many people didn't even know that, right? Just to kind of maybe remove the hatred. Number 3, if there's children involved, they're his responsibility. And if he has to pay her to look after them because she's got no other way, then maybe so as well. Again, you can contact the scholars for the specifics. But to take all of his assets is obviously incorrect if they're his assets and not her assets and she's not contributed to them. There's this argument that she's sorted out your inner home while you've been out there making your business up. So maybe she should be given something. Yes, if you want to give her something, that's fine. All right? Maybe you should give her just something to survive or, to at least steal, but to ask for all of your assets. If the law is on her side for whatever reason, I don't know the details, there's not much he can do.
Right, that's my question.
And about the children as well, he'll try his best. But if she's got malice, if she's got what they call the malicious mother syndrome, it can be a malicious parent syndrome, but it's the malicious mother syndrome, I feel sorry for him. Because and if anybody sitting here is a malicious mother or a malicious parent, father, then you need to really think. If you are depriving your other spouse from seeing the children, you're not doing good. You're not punishing him at all. You're punishing your children. They think, because there's so much rage, they think they're punishing their husband, ex-husband, by not letting them see their children. All you're doing is you're giving your children an unstable life. That child may grow up with rage, God forbid, God protect, or with deficiency in something else because you're messing up the tradition. All right? You're not letting him see his biological father. And it just happens too much. And again, I've got the details in my book as to why that happens. There's narcissism, there's anger, and there's several complexes. It's a mental health problem, I think. Right? But anyway, once the law's on you can't. Do I have to take it?
No.
All right, go ahead. You go ahead. Just joking.
How does one culture the quality of getting by with whatever means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given? How does one culture that quality in the wife and the husband?
How do you acquire that kind of quality?
Yes.
Well, number one, if you want that kind of quality, you need to find a spouse of that nature. Because if you're going to get a spouse of another nature and then you're going to try to force him or her into another nature, there's people who say, a good person, as I said in the beginning, but she doesn't wear hijab, but she will wear it inshallah, and then you're forcing her and then you're cursing her and all that. So number one, it has to start from that. And then the du'as. Are you asking after marriage? You just came up with this idea after marriage? Contentment. Well, contentment, I think you need to find a family who's content, generally deal with contentment, right? Number two, if you're now married and your wife is a spendthrift, your husband is a spendthrift, then basically I think there are several ways. Number one, make lots of dua, especially after tahajjud. Number two, Rabbana hablana min azwajina. That's like a one dua for everything, right? It really is. And number three is get books on qana'ah. Ghazali, Maulana Shabali Thanwi, rahmatullah, all these people, whatever they've written on qana'ah, have a ta'aleem. Show them. Start looking at people who have less than you so you can be more satisfied. Because people have this idea of looking at people above them, which doesn't help. It just makes you mad. So these are several multi-pronged approach you'll have to do, and just hope to Allah He gives you that. Very difficult to change a person's temperament though. But may Allah gives, because the hadith says, al-iqtisadu fi nafaqati nisful ma'isha. Your moderation in spending is half of your livelihood. Because you have not much control over what comes in necessarily, but you do have control of what goes out. So if you're careful about what goes out, you've controlled yourself. right? Stop looking at advertisements, window shopping, and all the rest of it. Jazakallah khair. Barakallah fi. Let's make a short dua. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تبارك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. Ya Allah, we ask you for your special mercies. Oh Allah, we ask you for your special blessings. Oh Allah, envelop this gathering and those who are listening with your blessings. Oh Allah, we ask you for your special attention. We ask you for your generosity. Oh Allah, we ask you for your forgiveness. Oh Allah, forgive every wrong of ours. Oh Allah, pardon our defects, our shortcomings. Oh Allah, these lives we've spent in wrong and transgression. Oh Allah, we ask that you make the final days of our life the best parts of our life. Oh Allah, that you make from now on the rest of our life better than our previous part of our life. Oh Allah, all those who are married here, oh Allah, grant them great barakah and blessing. Oh Allah, grant them barakah and blessing from where they could never imagine. Oh Allah, turn their marriages around, enhance their marriages. Oh Allah, if they're good already, oh Allah, make them even better. Oh Allah, grant them the same love that you gave to the Prophet ﷺ and his wife, Aisha radiallahu anha. Oh Allah, those who are not married, oh Allah, we ask that you grant them pious, righteous, happy partners that will be the joy of their eyes. Oh Allah, we ask that you grant the same for our children and our progenies. Oh Allah, you accept this special dua for us, that you make our spouses and our progeny the source of gladness for our eyes. Oh Allah, our entire generations until the day of judgment. Oh Allah, allow us to be the keys of goodness and forces for goodness and not the forces for evil. Oh Allah, those who are having trouble in their marriages or with their children or with their parents, oh Allah, find them a way out to resolve these problems. Grant us the understanding of how to do that. Grant us the barakah of how to do that. And oh Allah, we ask that you send your abundant blessings on our Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Grant us his company in the hereafter. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifuna wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.